Have you ever had someone cross a boundary and you had a really big reaction to it? Or you were tired and overwhelmed and you had a reaction to someone else that was way out of proportion to the situation, and afterwards you feel shame and guilt sink in, and that really stinks. Well, I have found one key action which helps me avoid these situations, and I'd love to share with that with you. Hey friend, do the daily demands of family life leave you exhausted with no time for yourself? Ready to make self-care and healthy boundaries a natural part of your day, all while embracing your roles as a wife and mom? Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Christina, married 16 years to a neurodiverse man, mom of 3 neurodiverse kids, and many more roles. Welcome to the Moms and Neurodiverse Families Podcast. Get ready to begin your self-care journey. Grab your Sante latte and listen in as we take a small step towards a healthier you. I would love to invite you to join our email family to get extra self-care tips and support. Also, I'm launching a planner designed specifically to help you harmonize your self-care with your many, many roles. Sign up through the link in the show notes for more information, and I will keep you updated. Now, let's talk about how we deal with pressure. I'm reflecting on a time a couple years ago where I felt so much pressure. Pressure to stay on time with our schedule so I could get the kids out the door in time for school. Pressure for the kids not to have another meltdown while my spouse was on a work call. Pressure to figure out where that stinking lunchbox went to that was in my kid's hands 2 minutes ago. And somehow between the kitchen and his backpack, it was gone. And I already came into that morning on a deficit. I had a lack of sleep, and none of my normal self-care activities I do now, I wasn't doing any of them at that point. Exactly before we had to leave, another problem came up, and I could feel my frustration just rise up. And I erupted, yelling at my kids, which is not my best self, as Dr. Jim Wilder talks about. And it pained me that I got to that point. And also, I had to do damage control with my kids on the way to school, because taking neurodiverse kids who are escalated, dropping them off at school, which is a whole nother level of difficulty and problems, is a good way to guarantee for them to have a meltdown at school. So we did work it out. However, like back then, I felt it was like a no-win situation, which is a lie, and that's not truth. But I just did not know how to function and live with so many expectations on me and these pressures on me. Now, there's multiple things that were going on in that scenario, depending upon which piece you want to pick out. But right now, I just want to focus on when I cross the boundary of respecting my kids and also my own God-given limit. One of the main issues that I want to focus right now is that I was emotionally unregulated or dysregulated before I ever began my morning with the kids. So if we're talking about people respecting us and our limitations and our boundaries, this needs to go the other direction as well. We need to respect others. The patience level that is needed for neurodiverse families is incredibly high between challenges with finding the right clothes and the food and the sound challenges of volume. There is so much that's going on there. But when we are emotionally regulated, it is a lot easier for us to be able to handle that load. Now, this is not a formal definition of emotional regulation, and you can go look that up, but this is my suggestion of what emotional regulation is. From a Christian standpoint, again, there'll be multiple perspectives from just a worldly view, secular view. For me, emotional regulation is understanding and managing my emotions in a way that aligns with God's will, but also will cause spiritual growth in my life. And I need to cultivate this. And it's a willingness for me to learn, how does my brain function? How did God design my brain? How did he design my body, my nervous system, my parasympathetic nervous system? I need to understand how he made the physical. I need to understand the spiritual so it can help me mentally. And then how can I lead myself instead of having my emotions lead me? And throughout all of this, I am seeking God's guidance through these moments. Now, that sounds like a whole bunch, right? It really does. But in its essence, it's one, being open to God, being open to how He made us biologically, and seeing that God, when He works with us, it is not just spiritually. He works with us in our physical, our biologically, emotionally, all the different parts of who we are. And that is really where self care comes in. And being emotionally regulated is self care. So, why would we even want to spend time on this? Well, one, a peaceful mind is a beautiful thing. And I can reflect back, and even moments now, I can feel like my mind can be like a whole bunch of kittens running around in my head, and I'm trying to herd the cats all together, which is very difficult. When I am either unregulated, and this is for anyone, you do not need to be neurodiverse to need to be emotionally regulated. 'Cause that is a thought that, well, only people who are neurodivergent, neurodiverse, they need it. Oh, no, 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 no. We all need this. I have seen many people who people might call neurotypical, which is not a preferred term, but someone who is not neurodivergent, completely be unregulated and lose it. I mean, just scroll through social media and you can see people who are completely dysregulated and losing it on recorded camera. That is not something that any of us really want to be. Having a peaceful mind will help with peaceful actions. And also, understanding the biology that our nervous system and a parasympathetic system, like being at rest internally, has so many good things for us. If your body is always ready for a fight or ready to like run away, or possibly you freeze in either terror or I don't know what to do, that impacts us being in those modes for lengthy amount of time. So being emotionally regulated is more than us honoring other people and their boundaries. It is so good for us. And if you're listening, I can pretty much guarantee it's because you value your loved ones and you want to be calm and peaceful. You want them to treat you the same way. For those who are neurodiverse, oftentimes they will learn by watching someone else's example and they will model. So as you go through this process and as you act out and sometimes verbalize what is an internal process for you externally, over repeated attempts, they can model this. And let me give a quick example. So when our family and working with how to handle challenges, I have had communications with my spouse and with the kids and how we could handle some of these problems. It was a intellectual conversation, I would say. I was sharing information, they were receiving it. However, I saw the application of what we discussed didn't really happen very often. And I found by being curious and observing that when I would first express, we're going to handle these conflicts in an ABC manner. And then when I modeled it and I would actually express my thought process, I began seeing it being copied by others. For example, when it becomes too loud in our home, or maybe we're in the car, we use a certain code word and we say that word, and everyone knows that means for 1 minute, everyone is quiet. There's no music playing, there's no fidgets being played with, there's no sounds being made, no talking, no opening boxes. Everyone is quiet for 1 minute. And it is amazing what that can do for anyone when you are feeling so frustrated over something not working, or you just dropped something on your foot and there was a whole bunch of noise going on. Just having that 1 minute of quiet can allow your brain to relax and calm, and you remember of who you want to be in these situations. that had to be modeled multiple times. And now that is ingrained in our family. So by you expressing, like, so in this situation I just gave you, I would say, I am so frustrated that I've requested all of you multiple times to take care of your chores, and that has not happened. Mom is about to reach a level that she does not want to reach. So right now, we're doing code in whatever term you give it, and we will be quiet for 60 seconds for 1 minute. And then after that minute's over, informing them, okay, time is up. Thank you guys so much. I am doing so much better. Be prepared that if you're applying this concept, there will be times where they're not wanting to follow through with this. And so they can be a challenge. When others are able to experience the benefit of having that 1 minute of silence, you could call it code silence, code timeout, whatever you want to call it. And we use the word code because in the movie Megamind, he uses code, get the car. He's like, why are you using the word code before that? It's just a funny little quirky part of the movie. But having that term and then having a plan in place helps with emotion regulation. So how would you go about doing this? Well, one is understanding how your mind and my mind and our bodies work. And I would highly suggest that you begin checking out some of Dr. Jim Wilder's works, Chris Corsi, Mark Warner. I will put links in the show notes towards some of their resources. Also, Dr. Stephanie Holmes, she has done many small group studies on some of these books and also has recorded videos. So if you want something specifically from a neurodiverse perspective, she is the person to go to be able to watch those videos and to understand, how do I take what was said here, but apply it to my unique situation? So one, we need to learn about how our mind and body works, how when we become overwhelmed, our amygdala starts going crazy and takes over, and we can no longer do math. We're not able to be logical. And how can we shut down the amygdala so that we're able to be calmer and able to be the person we want to be? There is so much in this topic with neuroscience, with how the brain works, how God designed it. When you look at Psalms, it's like, be still and know that I am God. There's so many of these verses that really are reflecting the neuroscience of us stopping and being quiet and slowing our minds and pondering on things that are far beyond us, looking at nature, looking at how God made the world, that can help reset our mind. I could spend hours talking about this. So I'm just going to say, generally speaking, we need to learn more about this. And what I have learned, again, I'm not a trained person in neuroscience, but this is a continually evolving subject because the brain is so complex that God has made. So therefore, we need to have a very willing heart to learn and how to apply this. Now, after you learn, then we're looking at what are the tips and tricks that we can apply. And I can give you a couple here. One is deep breathing. And there's different types of deep breathing. There's a square method. There's the infinity or the 8. There's different ways, which on the podcast is hard for me to describe. But basically, it's looking at taking slow breaths in, take a moment to hold it, taking slow breaths out and take a moment to hold, and doing that very slowly, even for 2 minutes. If you try that, it is amazing how you can go from crazy mama to, okay, I'm ready for this now. I'm ready to be engaged with my husband and with my kids. Besides deep breathing, I've mentioned in the past the Pause app. That is something that if I want to have more of a guided meditation with peaceful music, I will use that. Also, I have found that music can be very helpful in helping me be emotionally regulated. There are physical actions we can do, and this goes into the whole your sensory profile. Everyone has a sensory profile, whether you're neurodivergent or not. We have a sensory profile, and it's more clear with those who are neurodiverse, whether it's autism or ADHD. It's clear of what they might be avoiding or seeking. And that's often what you see with sensory needs or concerns, is that they are avoiding certain things, such as avoiding light or avoiding certain sounds, or maybe they're seeking. And there's different types, proprioceptive and sound. So again, that's a whole nother realm. Being aware that we are a sensory person and that we need to understand how we can work with how we are uniquely made. Psalm 139. How can I work with how I'm uniquely made to help myself be the best person I can? And that can mean heavy work. So that could be moving heavy items. One of my children for 2 hours can just pick up rocks and just move them. And as we were doing yard projects, and was happy as a clam and very, very calm. Where another child, if they were requested to do that, would not have had that result. So sometimes doing heavy work, it could be pushing a mattress, it could be pushing against a wall, it can be anything requiring heavy effort, splitting wood. Those type of things can be regulating and calming for a person. It could be lights, possibly being in a room that is dimmed lights, or maybe it's being in a sunny room. It can be a trampoline. Being on a trampoline and bouncing on it can be regulating for a person. There are so many different actions that can be done to help us regulate. And this is really like a buffet. And it's a humongous buffet. In this area, I suggest occupational therapists, and specifically those who focus on regulating their sensory system so they feel calmer physically. But there are some great occupational therapists who can observe and watch your child and help figure out what is their sensory profile and what are they communicating. Unfortunately, I have not seen as many occupational therapists for adults, which is a real shame. And if you happen to know of some, please let me know. I would love to look more into this in the future, because I have found that there are more resources for adults that are developing as people begin realizing, oh, wait, these kids who are neurodiverse, autism, ADHD, they grew up and become adults and they still need some supports sometimes. So I'm seeing now that there's this realization, oh, maybe we should focus on this. But there are great books out there you can read to learn about sensory profiles. I just highly suggest that you get creative and be observant of yourself. What helps you to be calm? For some, it could be maybe like you want to just get a hug. And that pressure of when you get a hug is very calming for you. Maybe you need a weighted blanket. That might be helpful for you. For others, it is the lack of stimulus. Maybe you need to be in a place because that's quiet with no sounds and it's dark, because you've had so many kids trying to like hug you and like always grabbing on you because they want your attention and you need time away. The point is, there is so much here to learn about regulating ourselves, but the ones I really highly suggest is deep breathing, and also having some music you can listen to that will calm and slow your mind down. Journaling can be a great way also to get regulated. I mean, the options are endless. And then finally, after you figure out what helps you through different trial and error methods, you make a plan of what you need to incorporate into your day. A concept which I believe came from Jeremy Rochford from the NeuroFM podcast, called pre-regulation, which was first used in helping those who are neurodivergent, can also apply to us. The idea is that before you walk into a high-stress situation or a high-stress day, you are doing activities to regulate yourself before you get into that so that you can stay calm and focused and honoring to others while you're in that challenging moment. And I believe this applies to anyone. We all have had those days that are incredibly stressful and hard, and sometimes we're able to handle it better than others, and that's because we were rested. Sleep is a big part of our regulation. We were rested and we were able to handle those challenges. So maybe that's part of your morning. You have some time that you spend your eyes closed and you're meditating in a Bible verse, or you're listening to some very peaceful music. And that is, you're calming and slowing down your mind before you even walk into the day, or before you go over to someone's house with a family and you know it's going to be loud And maybe they have a dog and that dog's not very well trained and you have kids who have issues with it. Or there are people who just don't understand boundaries and they are always trying to force your kids to give them a hug and your kids are not wanting to give that hug. Doing pre-regulation for anyone can be helpful before you go into those challenging moments. Is there anything you need to have pre-planned as part of your daily routine? But then when you know you're starting to get escalated and you know yourself best, there's a point of no return. You want to go a couple clicks south of that and have a plan of like when you get to that level and maybe it's your teeth are clenched and your muscles are clenched and you are thinking of responses in your head, or maybe even before that point. Whatever that level is of frustration or overwhelmed, that is a marker when you need to take a break and do something to help you regulate. Depending upon how challenging your life is, you may have to do that even earlier in your frustration level. But the point is, it's pre-thought out. And when you start noticing that you are having difficulty, you start taking action. And that can be 1 minute, removing yourself for 1 minute away from a situation. Or maybe it's putting earbuds for a few minutes and listening to music that you love, because music can help bring us back into alignment with who we are and who God wants us to be. As long as it's music that's edifying and good. There's some music that may end up bringing you down, but you get the picture of what I'm trying to say. We have a plan in place of maybe a daily activity to help you be regulated, what you're going to do if it starts happening in the middle of the day. And maybe there's going to be times when we mess up our plan afterwards of how we're going to regenerate ourselves emotionally, as in how I'm going to return myself back to who I want to be as a follower of Jesus, my heart, and to make amends. Because if we hurt someone, we have to make amends for that. We have to own our own actions. I have a caveat here. If you are in emotional, abusive, physically abusive, all the different types of abusive relationships there can be, if you are in that situation with someone and you are trying to apply your own emotional regulation to withstand and deal with that, there are limitations. And this is where you need to have a wise, godly counsel, someone who is neurodiverse trained and also trauma aware to guide you through this process, because you cannot stay in a situation like that and apply emotion regulation and assume that everything is going to be hunky-dory and you'll be okay. There is an impact of continually staying in that situation. So emotional regulation is not a method for us to stay in a traumatic and hurtful situation. It is something meant to help us through challenging moments. Yes, it can help us even through traumatic moments, but ongoing situations, that is something where people who are much wiser than me can help you through. And I will have links to some of the, like Dr. Stephanie Holmes, she has links to many different practitioners who are experienced in multiple different aspects of neurodiverse life, not only those who have gone through abuse, but also with families, people of color. There's lots of different resources there available to you to check out, to find someone who is trained, because that was not the case. When I look back into, 7, 8 years ago, there was hardly anything out there. And we are so blessed to now have, if you come from a faith perspective and you're looking for someone to give you input from that perspective, there are people out there that can guide you through sometimes very difficult situations and trying to understand what is the biblical response to not always a normal challenge. So, a quick recap. We're talking about how you and I, being emotionally regulated, can help us ahead of time, not to cross boundaries, not to hurt others, but help us to be present, to deal with the daily challenges of neurodiverse families, and so that we can honor others and honor ourselves. Here's a quick reflection question. So, what would life look like if a majority of the time you dealt with these challenges and you stayed emotionally regulated, not stuffing your emotions, not hiding, but if you stayed emotionally regulated and you were aware of what's going on and you were able to keep your heart and mind calm, how would you feel after those challenges and moments? That can be an amazing way to encourage us to take the steps that we need. Thanks for being here, and I hope that some of these thoughts were helpful for you. Hey, thank you for joining me today. I pray this episode gave you encouragement to take one small step. If so, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help other women find this show. By the way, if you're loving this conversation and want more encouragement like this, join my email list at bit.ly/myselfcare. That is bit.ly/myselfcare. I have a planner launching soon that will help you put all this into action in your own life. I look forward to chatting with you again next week for another episode.